How's everybody doing? Great. Well, I own Funded Today. We call ourselves the world's most successful crowdfunding agency. Why do we do that? Because in the past 18 months, we've helped startups, investors raise nearly $35 million. So last month alone, we raised $7 million. In the next 12 months, we're on track to raise $90 million. How do we do it? Who's heard of crowdfunding? All right, good. I'm speaking to a good crowd here. For those of you that don't know what Kickstarter or Indiegogo is, I'm probably just going to use the term Kickstarter, but we'll make that synonymous with crowdfunding in general. Basically, it is a place where you can put your idea in prototype form, make a video, and raise money in as little as 30 or 60 days. This one I'm showing you right here, it's actually live right now. It's called Perch. It's a wooden laptop stand. The title of this presentation today is how we can help you raise $100,000 or more in 30 days for whatever's inside your head. So let's start with that. How many of you have a business idea out here or already have one? Everybody have a business idea? I imagine that's why you're here. Here's the real question, though. How many of you have done something substantial with that idea? Meaning you're making enough money to not have to have a real job. All right, we got a few out here. How many of you would like to? All right. Who would like to make $100,000 in 30 days? Or in the case of the example I just showed you, 26 hours. All right. Let's show you how it's done. First, I want to just tell a little bit of my story, why you can trust me, and what I'm talking about. I originally started in accounting of all places. I was planning on becoming an attorney. I was going to school, studying accounting. Everybody says accounting is the language of business. Simultaneous to that, I had started a little company with a friend, and it had done really well. And we'd sold that company for a little bit of money. And I'd taken the knowledge that I'd learned from that company and started some small business consulting. So I was working with all kinds of different clients, helping them with email marketing, paid media advertising, a lot of the same stuff that I'm applying today at Funded Today. And one of my clients, because we billed like an accountant or an attorney where we had an hourly rate, one of my clients said, Zach, we can't afford your hourly rates. Have you heard of this thing called Kickstarter, though? We'll give you a percentage of all the money that we raise, and if you do well, you make a lot of money. If you don't do well, you don't make anything. How does that sound? I'm a gambler. I'm a risk taker. It seemed like a good proposal, and they had a pretty good idea, and I said, okay, let's do it. 15 days into their campaign, we'd raised $50,000. At that point, I reached out to another friend of mine who became the other half of Funded Today. His name's Thomas Albert. He was doing some political consulting for some high-profile GOP candidates, and he said, we could raise a lot more money for this. Give me a shot at it. He jumped on, and together, we had a little bit of a synergistic flow going on, and we raised another $100,000 for this campaign and ended up raising them well over 6 figures. At that point, we realized we were onto something, but I was still a little bit bullheaded. And so there was this company actually out of Orlando, Florida. Anybody know Freewaves? Oh, okay, cool. Harry Erickson was one of the founders, and it's a team of ear, nose, and throat doctors, and they had raised about $190,000, had about 100 hours left, roughly, and they called us up and said, Zach, we've heard what you've done on some crowdfunding campaigns. Help us. Kickstarter has something called all or nothing funding, meaning that if you are not fully funded, you don't get any of your money. These guys' campaign had a goal of $300,000, which is pretty high. They'd raised $190,000, didn't have much time left to do it. They still needed over $100,000. The risk was great on our end. We'd have to spend quite a bit of money up front because that's our model. We pay for everything up front, we get paid later. And so the risk was, should we do it? Should we not? My business partner, he's like the Steve Jobs, the dreamer type. I'm becoming more and more like that. And he said, let's do it. We can do it. We can make it happen. And we'd ran some tests and we'd proven a little bit that it could work, but it was a big amount of money. We're talking less than a few days to raise 6 figures, right? I was scared. I had the money to put up, but I didn't know if I wanted to make that risk. And he decided to take the risk. And because it was my consulting practice, all the clients were coming through me. He said, I'll just give you a consulting fee, $5,000 or something. I'll see what I can do. And I'll take all the risk. So he grabbed like his dad's credit card or something and ran it up as high as he could. And he funded them. $325,000 later, I made $5,000. I think he made close to 6 figures in that amount of time. And I said, all right, I'm opening up all my lines of credit. Let's go. Let's get things done. Let's start a business together. I was sold at that point. And the rest is history. This is our signature spike. Almost every time Funded Today comes on, we work with a lot of clients like this where they're doing kind of well. You can see he was raising $3, $4, a couple $1,000s a day. Kind of died off till a point where he wasn't even raising a couple $100 a day. Hires Funded Today, and then you see he's had $50,000 days. And then, of course, probably the most famous example, the Baubax travel jacket, Haral Sangavi. 45,000 people, nearly $9.2 million raised. All right, so a lot of you are on Amazon, and I wanted to tweak my presentation to kind of speak to you. Why crowdfunding? Why should you try crowdfunding when most of you are on Amazon? What benefit might it have to you? First thing that I thought of, and you guys have probably seen this if you've done any sort of business class before, Kickstarter backers, they're innovators, they're early adopters, which means a couple things. One, they've got a lot more money. Two, they're more willing to back things that aren't yet in existence. Why is that important? Because has anybody ever put a product on Amazon and made $1 million in 30 days? Anybody ever made $10 million in 30 days? Okay. You can do that on Kickstarter. Imagine the jump start you can have for your business because conversion rates are much, much greater. In fact, one of the common concerns of almost all of our clients are, you're raising so much money for us. Please, let's do some post-Kickstarter stuff. Let's run marketing and things to my website. And they're generally disappointed that we're not making them the $100,000, $200,000 per day returns that we're doing while we're working with them on Kickstarter. Why? Conversion. Kickstarter backers are forgiving. This is kind of small to read, but I'm sure you guys have some of these on your products. Slow piece of junk with no range. You get what you pay for. Who likes negative reviews on Amazon? They don't help your product, right? Compare that to Kickstarter. I just randomly grabbed a campaign. You can find this on every single one in the comments section. We're talking about backers that help you develop an amazing idea, and they offer all kinds of feedback like this. I'll share with all of you my slides. They're on slideshare.net right now, and on Twitter, tweet Zach Smith. You can follow along and download them because we got a lot to cover. But the feedback on this is great. They're like giving him ideas for the box. They're telling him how to tweak his logo. They're telling him, there's not one negative comment there, and he has like 10 pages of this kind of stuff. And his campaign was only on there for 30 days. You can then take that information and then put a product on Amazon, a great product, which has been talked about quite a bit at this conference, and have a much greater chance for success. 2.0, your existing Amazon products. We've done this. Everybody has a product on Amazon here for the most part. How would you like to take the feedback that people are giving you, 2.0 it, make it better, and then launch on Kickstarter, and then transition that into post-Kickstarter Amazon marketing? We did that with a client called the Rue Sport. That was one of the first stories of Funded Today, and just created a Rue Sport 2.0 and a Rue Sport Plus to compensate for when the big iPhones came out. Raised quite a bit of money, and now they're on Amazon doing really, really well. Last point, you do not need money up front. Everybody's always worried about, do I have to spend money? That's what's so great about Kickstarter and crowdfunding. You don't need any money up front. You can hire a friend and make a video for you. You can follow all the strategies that I'm going to teach in this presentation. You don't have to have a rich uncle or a rich dad. No venture capital required, no angels. You can do it all yourself and retain 100% equity in your company, which is what every entrepreneur wants. I love that I have full control of what I do. I don't need outside funding, and I did it with nothing, and you can too. So, 10 principles for a successful crowdfunding campaign. Number 1, I underlined the word create because when I first wrote this presentation, I put have a great product. But you've got to create one. You've got to be innovative. So, what makes a good product? And why do you need a great product? I created something that I like to call the crowdfunding success matrix. If you have a bad product and bad marketing, that's like blackness. You're not going to have any sort of success. If you have a bad product with some good marketing, it's kind of like a black hole because, right, you're just throwing the money in, but you're not really getting much out of it. If you have a good product and bad marketing, you're going to see an example like the product I showed you earlier that was doing really well, and then what did it do? It just troughed. Had that peak and then the valley. Nothing. Shooting star. Fly by, you never hear of it again. And finally, the one you want to be in, the one that we love, Baubax travel jacket, that's a good product, good marketing, you have a supernova. That's like the big old star that you see 100,000 years later here on Earth, right? Correct me if my science is wrong after. All right, so what is the formula for a great product? I've talked about this quite a bit at this conference. I want to hit over it again. My dad was a math teacher, so I got a little mathy here, even though I'm not that great at math myself. Ubiquity plus techie cool plus awesome product plus compelling chill factor story equals huge chance for success. This is what I think actually resonates more with marketing in general as a whole, not just with crowdfunding. I really believe in this, aside from maybe ubiquity. So let's look at a couple products on Kickstarter that fit the mold. Pebble raised nearly $20 million, maybe a little more the second time around. Let's see, what does that mean? Ubiquity means, is it everywhere? A lot of people wear a watch, right? Most everybody has a watch. What did they do? They made it techie or cool. They added all kinds of functions, kind of like the Apple Watch. Their story was pretty cool, and they had an amazing video to boot. An airplane. It's a paper airplane. Everybody remembers throwing paper airplanes around? What did they do? They made an app out of the paper airplane so the paper airplane could be controlled through your phone. Trunkster Luggage, one of my clients, they innovated on the concept of luggage and made it smart. They made it Bluetooth. They made it have interesting compartments. Everybody travels. Everybody needs luggage. They made it techie. Their story behind it was very compelling. And finally, Coolest Cooler, probably one of the most renowned examples on Kickstarter. It's a cooler. Everybody goes to the beach. Everybody goes to the park with their kids or family. What did they do? They made it so it could blend. They put speakers into it. They put Bluetooth. They put charging stations. And the story was pretty cool of how he came about with it as well. Ubiquity, techie, awesome product, compelling story, huge chance for success. All right. Know thy margins. I work with so many small business owners and entrepreneurs, and they're creating a business that doesn't have any room to grow because it costs so much. You're probably a good crowd because you know how to source from China. You know how to get things for cheaper. A lot of my clients are like innovative dreamers, and they haven't even really thought about the math behind, why am I even doing this if I'm not going to make money? Because in order to have a life that you love, you got to have a little bit of money, right? So one of the clients that we worked with was called Baubax. They're now a multi-million-dollar company, and they have 6 or 7 different products that they've just innovated over the last 2 years is all. And they're really, really good at creating nice-looking products. I mean, both those look really nice, right? Looks like the notebooks that were given out by Merchant Words at this conference. And the wallet as well. The Basic Notebook and the Baubax wallet, they've branded their company accordingly. Really, really good margins. This is the hardest slide to see, but I wanted it all on there. Let's say you have marketing costs of 30%, 35%. Your Kickstarter fee is 5%, which is actually what their fee is. I think Indiegogo varies 4 or 5%. Credit card fee ranges from 2 to 4%, but I just went on the high end. Let's call your COGS $80, costs you $10 to ship it. You're going to sell it for $100. If you market it, you'll sell $16.50. If you don't market it, if you do market it, you'll sell $5,000. You'll see that you're losing money in that example. And one of the maxims that I believe in very strongly, if you can't spend money to make money, you don't really have a business. So the second example is kind of where you want to be. I like to see 35, 40, even 50% or better in terms of margin. When you're building out a product, if you don't have that, it's going to be hard for you to attract customers, and the best way to attract customers is to spend money. So when you're building out your products, get your margins right, especially when you're going to go on to Kickstarter, because you're going to offer your product at a discount there, generally to those early adopters and innovators anyway. All right, your LVG, setting your least viable goal. Remember the Free Waves example? He set his goal at $300,000. He legitimately needed that much money. However, it was extremely difficult for him to reach, and he hired us right at the very end, right at the point of desperation. What we like to see is to set your least viable goal. This is a goal that will get everything you need, manufacturing-wise, injection molding, blow molding, whatever you need to make your product, but is low enough such that you can supersede that immediately. Let me give you 2 examples. The first one is a company we worked with, James Olander, out of Colorado. He had a laptop stand, and he had a goal of $475,000. Extremely difficult to reach. He was actually very successful when he hired us, but he still had no chance of hitting his goal. And we spent a ton of money and did a ton of marketing to get him to his goal. Compare that to the example I shared with you earlier, Perch, which has already raised over $250,000. They've still got quite a bit of time left on their campaign. They set their goal for $20,000. Kickstarter is paradoxical in the sense that you put your project on there, you put your idea on there, you're hoping that the crowd will want to fund your idea, but then they don't until you fund your idea. Does that make sense? So the lower your goal is, and the faster you can meet that goal, the more you'll be able to attract a crowd. All right, again, I edited this slide. Tell a great story versus have a great story. I'm a firm believer in honest, transparent, real marketing. And the best way to do that, if you can take one thing away from all this, is to actually have a belief, actually have something that you believe in, that you can put your whole heart and soul behind for your company. Here's the right way to do it. This is a company we worked with that sold watches, and this is the ad that we used. This 73-year-old watchmaker launched a Kickstarter. His newest watch is awesome. The other ad we used was 73-year-old watchmaker passes on legacy of watchmaking to grandson. It's a powerful, compelling story, and it makes you want to buy the watch, not because the watch was actually cool. You can't even see the watch in this ad, for example. Anybody even see the watch? It's like circled in red there. You can't even see it. It actually is a pretty nice-looking watch. But it was the story that resonated with people. The story even resonated negatively. People were like, is this grandpa even really real? So we had to find the grandpa, get a YouTube video of him, and put it out press-wise because so many people were wondering if the grandpa was even a real person. The advertising and story was so powerful. The wrong way. Worked with a client who was selling a smart water bottle. The reason he came up with the smart water bottle is because, like us, we're sitting here at a conference or we're working or we have a work-from-home job and we forget to drink water. We're just sitting there all day and we get a headache and we forget to drink water. So he came up with this idea. For some reason, he didn't want to tell that story. Instead, he came up with a story of playing indoor soccer and playing basketball and needing a phone to remind him that he wanted to drink water. And his whole video and his whole story was behind that, even though that wasn't even the reason he came up with the idea in the first place. I don't know about you, but when I play indoor soccer or basketball or any sort of sport or go running, I don't need to be reminded. I want to drink my water, right? And obviously, his campaign failed. I grabbed two examples from this conference because I've had the chill factor happen to me twice. So I figured I'd showcase them here. The chill factor is legitimately when you get goosebumps when someone tells you their story. Stand-a-roo is by a guy here from, I think, University of Florida. Correct me if I'm wrong. And basically, he saw his grandma struggling to get up out of a couch. And when he told me the story for the very first time when I was sitting in one of the mastermind groups a couple days ago, I got chills because he cared so much about his grandma, he wanted to invent something that would help her. Coco Vana, same thing. He was struggling with high blood pressure, and he found that drinking coconut water, coconut milk, was helping him. He didn't want to drag a machete around with him all the time, so he invented a really simple way to open up a coconut, and it's a pretty darn good idea. I could see that working really well with cruise lines. I could see that doing really well with, I mean, there's so many, it's a really good idea. I think Damon John is going to be impressed. All right, show, don't tell. How to feature your benefits. We have all this in place, and this is something almost everybody gets wrong. It probably seems so basic to you, but everybody gets it wrong. I bet every single one of you, if you have one of your Amazon pages, I'd be like, oh, what the heck does all this mean? What's in it for me? Why is this important? How do we go about doing that? Let's compare to one of the best, the Baubax travel jacket. This is the jacket that raised $9 million, and he had 15 features to this jacket. Eye mask. Notice how he's showing the eye mask in action with someone leaning up against a plane or a bus. Cozy drink pocket. Someone in action, put it into their pocket. Gloves. Someone sitting down, getting a little cold because of the air conditioning, put it on. iPod pocket. He even had one of those neck pillow things you can use on a plane that's built into it. And he showcased all of those examples with beautiful, and those were even gifts too, meaning they moved around and demonstrated the action. What about featuring the benefits for these? How do we do that? The feature is you can stand up out of your chair or your couch. Or the Coco Vana, you can open up a coconut easily. But why is that important? Maybe for the Coco Vana, it's don't, and this is just me like shouting them out on the spot. Maybe for Coco Vana, it's stop worrying about having to carry around a machete so everybody thinks you're some kind of psycho and have this nice tool instead. Make it really easy. For the stand-a-roo, maybe it's does grandma call you at 10 or 11 o'clock at night when you're out with your friends or on a date? Are you tired of it? How would you like it so that you can feel very confident that your grandma is going to be okay, and get to bed, be able to get up out of her couch without you constantly being bothered by it? Again, though, that's just me shouting out here. And you want to do that with every single one of your features. With this water bottle, it fits the definition of ubiquity, because everybody drinks water bottle. It has a stainless steel medical grade ball inside of it. That's the adjective that describes the ball that is the feature. What's the benefit? The benefit is perhaps that if you drink a protein shake, you won't have that nasty bit of clumpy protein that goes down your mouth and gets stuck in your teeth. You need to do this for every single one of your products. Write down all the features and then translate those into a benefit. All right, when you're on Kickstarter, how can you make more money with your existing backers? This is something that we have pretty much systematized now, and it's about having multiple pledge levels and upsells. This is a client we worked with called Betterback, raised her nearly $1.3 million, Catherine Krug, out of California. And this is a little infographic that I recommend pretty much just copying and pasting and stealing. It works out really, really well. We created this originally. What it does is a lot of things. Let's just start with the one pack. What we've done is we've called it early backs. So the Betterback was a device that was used when you sit down at a chair so you'd have good posture. It wrapped around your legs and your back, and it kept you in like nice, perfect posture while you're at a desk all day. So it was ubiquitous. It was techie. Had a great story behind why she created it, because she was sick and struggling. And the video was really well done as well. And the product obviously was amazing because it raised over 7 figures. So what did she do? Early backs, $49, hurry, limited quality. That was for early backers on Kickstarter, and she limited that price. Kickstarter backs, people on Kickstarter that didn't necessarily jump on board early, get it for $75. Estimated retail value, $99, and she held true to that. If you try to buy a Betterback today, you'll pay about $100 for it. By doing that, she created urgency. But what she did even better was showcase the different levels of items that you could get. 1-pack, 2-pack, 6-pack. Why was that important? Because with about 4 to 5 days left on their campaign, we sent out an email message to all of the backers. There was thousands at the time. And we said, hey, do you want the early back price? Do you want the Kickstarter price? You've already got 1 back, Betterback. How would you like to get 6? And we made $58,000 in about 48 hours. With Baubax travel jacket, it was even more intense. We raised $935,000 in 48 hours doing the same thing, because he had all these different items that he was selling on Kickstarter. It's very important to practice that principle. All right, number 7, timing your launch. Let's look at one of the most exciting examples in Kickstarter history. Does anybody know the story behind Coolest Cooler? All right, Coolest Cooler raised millions of dollars, but the first time around, they only raised $123,000. Kickstarter has that all or nothing funding. They had a goal of $250,000, and so he didn't meet his goal. So the $123,000 that he raised was gone. He launched in the middle of the winter. Granted, he still hasn't delivered this product yet because it's taken forever to build, but the first time around, everybody was like, I can't really see myself wanting to go down to the beach or go to the park right now. It's the middle of winter. What did he do? He launched his product again and raised millions of dollars, this time focusing on right at the beginning of summer. So everybody kind of had that mindset. So even though he didn't have a product to deliver, it was the mindset and the timing that made a big difference for his launch. Timing is also important with all the different innovations and products on Kickstarter. The Hydrate Me Smart water bottle raised a ton of money. Going back to this other water bottle example, not only did they have a bad story, they decided to try to launch right after this campaign came out. You've got to space things out. We've worked with a lot of smart luggage. Barracuda, Space Case 1, the Trunkster luggage. It's the most funded luggage in Kickstarter history. We spaced those launches out so that we could raise millions of dollars for every single one of them. We didn't launch them all at the same time. You should do the same thing as well as you're planning out your crowdfunding campaign. Anybody ever heard of the other travel jacket? $7,820 and 61 backers. I don't even know if they ever got funded. That's because they literally tried to launch right when we were launching Baubax travel jacket. Timing's very important, especially if you're not good at marketing. Let's talk about marketing. How do you go about and do these sorts of numbers? How do you go about and raise that $100,000 in 30 or 60 days for your idea so you can jumpstart your business? Real estate, insurance salesman, everybody knows this is the exact same way, even though now we're in a digital age. Pre-campaign, friends, family, fools. You've got to get them on board, and it's more than getting them on board. Yesterday I said always be closing. I'm a firm believer of that. You really do have to be a salesman, and if you say you're not a salesperson yet, you can become one, and this is the best way to become one. If you believe in your idea enough that you have the story and the vision behind it, you should easily be able to ask people to buy your product. So if this were my invention and this was my prototype, I would go up to all my friends and family. Maybe you have a couple thousand friends on Facebook. That's an easy way to do it digitally. And you'd say, look, here's a picture of my product. I'm going to be launching this in 60 days. It's going to cost $30. Can I count on you to give me $30? Oh, yeah, sure. Can I really count on you to give me $30? Like, will you give me your credit card? Can I put in your name and email and phone number and remind you right when I launch? And then I wait for you to say yes or no. It's cash in hand. You want to, in my opinion, you want at least 200 of your friends and family, acquaintances to back your product. The more you can, the better. It's very, very important to not just assume people are going to back your product. Legitimately make it awkward on them until you get good enough at selling that you believe in your product enough that people will back it. The reason why goes back to the paradoxical nature of crowdfunding, right? Until your product is funded, they don't really want to fund your product. What better way to jumpstart that than to leverage your existing network? And what better way to practice pitching your product, refining those features into benefits, than to apply it to your friends and family and those that might believe in your dream? All right, now it's launch time. And in the pre-launch stage as well, you can do what's called embargo. An embargo is something you can do with press, where you can pitch press on the idea, tell them when you're going to launch, and secure first right of writing an article for the, so like, for example, if I wanted TechCrunch to write about that water bottle, I might tell them, no one else is going to write about this for 7 days. I want you to write a really nice feature up about it, and only after 7 days will I let somebody else write. Press like that, because now their news isn't getting saturated. So that's another thing you can do pre-campaign, in addition to building your email list of friends and family and fools. All right, now we're in the launching stage. At Funded Today, our launch stage is very, very systematic. We call it the 3 Ps. We focus primarily on the first P, which is paid media. Everybody always asks me, well, where do you spend money? Answer, anywhere I can make money, or at least break even. So whether that's Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, Dig, KickTrack, or blog sites that will let me advertise on their website, I'm spending money wherever I can make money. And what I do is I use statistical significance. And I can send you some of the calculators and stuff that we use, but I like to use tests of statistical significance, meaning I reach an audience size that's big enough within those first 1 to 7 days of my campaign. And based upon what I achieve through those tests of significance, I'm able to project with pretty good accuracy, up to 2 standard deviations, how much I'm going to raise, just from my paid media side of things, the amount of time left on my campaign, how big my audiences are, etc. And it's a very powerful thing to do. I don't even implement the other 2 Ps until I've proven paid media is going to work. Because if paid media doesn't work, when I get an amazing article about your campaign, probably won't make that much money either. Paid media, I can target the exact people that believe in your campaign, that believe in what you're doing, that have campaigns that I've worked with in the past that are very similar to your campaign. So knowing full well that I'm targeting that right audience with paid media, I can pretty much validate whether you have a good idea or a bad idea very, very quickly. Once I validate it's a good idea, that's when I employ my other 2 tiers of marketing, which are press and partnerships. Press is very simple, but very hard. It's hard to convince people to write about you, and it's all about creating the angle, story. Even for the press, you have to sell them on your story about why they should write about you instead of the 500 other things that they're being pitched every week. And you got to do it in a way that doesn't come across as annoying or sleazy or salesy and friendly. So how do you go about doing that? I have a lot of templates and things that I can share with everybody, so hit me up after this conference and I'll share some of those with you. But the key is consistency. The key is following up. Sometimes I'll write a really good press. I don't even believe in press releases, really. A lot of people are like, oh, let's do a press release or pay to do a press release. I'm all about targeting the one. So if I'm selling that water bottle, I'm going to find all kinds of fitness-related sites, and I'm going to reach out to whoever's the owner of that site and tell them why they should write about that water bottle. Same thing with the travel jacket. Same thing with smart luggage. I find those certain amount of people that are writing about that. And generally when I can get the big guys on board, as Will teaches quite a bit, Pareto's principle 80-20, you'll get the trickle-down effect of lots of other people syndicating that article. Partnerships is very important. What I do is I have a massive email list of people, probably closing in on a couple probably 1.5 million strong, double opted-in people that have backed past Kickstarter campaigns that we've worked with. Because in my past, that's what I did, was email marketing. These people are incentivized and excited, and they love Kickstarter. They're those innovators and early adopters, And we can tell them about products in exchange for gifts and bonuses and special deals to make them want to buy your product. You should build an email list as well. How do you do that? Going back to paid media. You can send them to a landing page, as Will teaches, and build up that list even before your campaign launches. Once you have that, you need to work on partnerships. And partnerships can be with anybody. We work with A, B, C, D-list celebrities. They'll tweet, they'll Facebook, they'll Insta, pretty much whatever you want them to do. And the key, again, is building up those relationships beforehand. We worked with a client called Peak Designs. They're one of the biggest they're one of the biggest companies on Kickstarter. They've launched like 7 or 8 things, raised millions of dollars. But we worked them on their latest project, the Everyday Messenger Bag, and they networked with a really famous photographer that helped do extremely well for their campaign. Who can you find in your industry who is already credible, that will put their face behind the brand, that might even work on a contingency basis where they take a percentage of all the money raised, or where you might be able to pay them something that seems amazing to them, but knowing that you're applying these strategies, you can raise millions. Think about who you can find in that industry and then multiply those efforts. Once you find one, say, look, we've got this guy on board. Would you like to be a part of it? Would you like to be a part of it? And leverage connections until you keep leveraging more and more connections and you build up that network. And together, when you combine those 3 Ps, you can raise a lot of money. What do you do when your campaign's over, though? We have tons of trickle-down traffic. I just took this screenshot yesterday around this time. This is from Baubax Travel Jacket. Indiegogo, we launched their project on Kickstarter, the travel jacket, but we're working with them right now on Indiegogo. Remember how much I said they raised on Kickstarter? $9.1 million. How much do you see on In Demand? $10.2 million. They started out with the $9 million. It's been about 30-something days now. So we've raised them over $1 million more in 30 days by simply transitioning all of that traffic, all of that press, all of that flow into a very similar crowdfunding platform called Indiegogo that allows for something called In Demand, which is pretty much just like pushing your traffic down there and continuing to take pre-orders without a set fixed date and time of campaign funding ending. The other thing you can use, I just put up Shopify as an image there, but you can take pre-orders on your website. Just because you don't have your product doesn't mean you can't keep selling. Trunkster's still selling luggage even though they haven't sold, and I believe Coolest Cooler is probably doing the same thing. You can keep taking orders without having to even sell these products to keep building up capital to manufacture and build your idea. All right, a couple takeaways. Just do it. We've talked about that a lot at this conference. It's Nike's motto. Everybody can sit and do analysis paralysis. I was probably guilty of that quite a bit as well. That's why that's why I was scared to do the free waves, and Thomas was brave enough to take the leap. That's why I kind of took a long time to work with the Rue Sport, one of the first clients we worked with, and raise them money. You have to go about and actually just do it. You can't keep analyzing your numbers. You can't keep thinking, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. That's what crowdfunding's for. Put out what you believe is your best idea and your best story, and then let the crowd tell you. If you're so fixed and developed on what you already think is going to be your great big idea, you're going to struggle with adopters and innovators that tell you, hey, I'd like it if it said this, or I'd like it if you said this. That game product I showed you about, it had all kinds of tweaks and variations now, simply because of what the backer said, because he went in there with a very plain-looking game that had a great story behind it, that was very easily moldable into what ultimately has become a pretty fun game. Trust the crowd, get guidance from them, and just do it. The last one, I love this one the most. You might have a terrible idea, even after all the stuff I talked about. Notice how I didn't say I'm going to guarantee that I'm going to make you that kind of money. I said huge chance, huge probability of success. It might be that people don't resonate with your story. It's not powerful enough. It might be that you have something that maybe is just not a good fit for crowdfunding. And it might be that you just have a really bad idea. Or, hopefully, if you do fail, it's not a complete fail. It's a fail like Coolest Cooler, where it was just the wrong timing and he didn't have a lot of things lined up. And he tweaked that, and now he has multi-million-dollar launch success by failing fast. And what better way to do that on Kickstarter? So by failing fast, you can quickly pivot and adapt and create great businesses, great ideas very, very quickly. We had Elon was saying earlier, he said, how can I make a bunch of money really quick? And how can I not spend it? Really, the answer really is crowdfunding. There is, in my opinion, and based upon the tremendous success that my company has had, there really is no other way to taking that idea that you've written down on a napkin or that's been inside of your head and then just going full force, full bore ahead with it and believing and powering that entrepreneurial drive to success than crowdfunding. There's never been a better time. I mean, it's the American dream. Have you ever turned on late night TV and seen something you're like, I thought of that idea 10 years ago or 20 years ago, only to think that you never did it? It's happened to me. Don't let it happen to you. Now with very little upfront funding, very little effort even, you can test out whether or not that idea you have in your head is a good one or a bad one. And if it isn't, you can tweak it, or you can disband it, or you can come up with another one. You can keep iterating until you have something great. One bonus tip, everybody always asks me, so I put this one in late, should I go with Indiegogo or Kickstarter? I think the answer is pretty clear from my presentation. I focused a lot on Kickstarter. Here's why. We used to wonder, but now after running 200 campaigns, we've got all the data and all the points to prove it. Kickstarter has more traffic. Kickstarter has a much higher conversion rate, even when both pages are the exact same. I mean, an example is Baubax travel jacket. We didn't change a thing. We've only raised them $1.2 million in the last 30 days. We raised them $9 million before. Kickstarter has better branding and credibility. You actually look good being on Kickstarter. And here's the most important part. Kickstarter and Indiegogo both have algorithms. Indiegogo has an algorithm called Go-Go Factor. Kickstarter doesn't really have a special name for their algorithm, but basically, when you're successful, when you leverage that friends and family and fools aspect I talked about, you jump into the popular category. And Kickstarter has millions of visitors coming to their site. When you jump into the popular and magic and the various categories and subcategories for your idea or invention, you then are in the presence of all these other people that might resonate with your idea and keep it popular. Indiegogo, when you do that, nothing happens. And it's a big deal. So a campaign that you might raise $500,000 for on Kickstarter raises $1 million because of the positive externality that just being on that big platform does, whereas in Indiegogo, you'll only raise $500,000. It will be all your own efforts. However, one benefit of Indiegogo, because I'm good friends with a lot of the people at Indiegogo too, so I don't want to think they're like dogging on me up here, especially since they'll probably see this presentation. They have something called in-demand that Kickstarter doesn't have. And as you saw with in-demand, although I've only raised 1/10 the amount of money that I raised for Baubax, it's still a very good transition, especially if you don't want to build out a website. I mean, it's very simple, copy and paste, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get editing to create a campaign on there as well. So Indiegogo does have that going for them, whereas Kickstarter does not. And the last point, I have to say, and here's the stats on this as well. So Kickstarter, you can see the top image is monthly visits, Kickstarter, and I just got these from Alexa just yesterday as well. About 18 million visitors, 8 million unique. Indiegogo, 4 million. Monthly, 6. So you can see 3 times less in terms of total traffic. That alone makes you want to go to the bigger animal. No one puts their stuff on a different site than Amazon, right? So you shouldn't put your stuff on a different site than Kickstarter. So, and the last point, you should probably hire Funded today. So there's some resources. I have a little bit of time, and so I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions because I'm sure you probably have a lot. Again, all these slides are available. I think my last tweet was the link to the slides. So if you just look up tweet Zach Smith, you can get those slides. And there's a couple other resources on there. The Kickstarter stats page is pretty cool. They're very transparent with all their stats. They're very transparent with all the information. I mean, you can go on there and you can see how much money has been raised in every single category. It's really cool. I've never seen a company be that revealing. We've created a little stats page that's pretty cool. KickTrack is an awesome thing. It's very similar to what we created. And then if you would like to email us, support@funded.today. We're funded.today, not .com, because we get your project funded today.
All right. We got time for probably 3 quick questions here.
After the initial success, when you want to fulfill the orders, how does that work? Does it go through Kickstarter, or do I fulfill the orders and basically get the email of the customers?
You'll get the emails of all the customers immediately after the campaign ends. Literally, it's like instant. You'll get the money 14 days after. They wire it right to your bank account. And then it's up to you to start taking that money and delivering and fulfilling on the product.
Thanks.
Hey, this is Eric from University of Florida. So quick question. As far as the rewards a successful Kickstarter campaign is offering, have you seen any commonalities on what are the best types of rewards to offer? Yeah, for sure. A lot of people think to give intrinsic rewards or rewards that aren't necessarily product related. I'm a huge fan of actually giving what they're going to get. So if I were selling this water bottle, I would say for $30, you can have 1 water bottle. For $55, you can have 2. Always give your products as the main reward category.
All right, time for a couple more questions. Mr. John Lawson himself.
So I just wanted to ask, you showed the one where you did the first Kickstarter campaign and then you went and did the Indiegogo, I guess. Do you say that to run those concurrently, or how far apart would they be?
So you're talking about the Baubax travel jacket, or? So that one, I ran the Kickstarter campaign, and then as soon as the Kickstarter campaign was over, I had my Indiegogo page ready to go, and I just pushed go. We actually just barely did this for the second most funded product in Sweden called Pugs 2 days ago. We raised them $1.4 million on Kickstarter, and now we're on Indiegogo, and we just pushed go the moment that campaign ended.
All right, one more question here.
Hi, Zach, Ahsoka. Real quick, so what happens if you don't or can't deliver the product? It varies by platform as to what you have to give it back. Let's say you're halfway through development and it's not viable. I'm sure there's some, real challenging stories out there. You highlighted successes.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of, maybe the ones that haven't gone so well and what the lessons learned were? Thanks.
Fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I haven't had that issue with my clients yet, not being able to develop their product. I'm also kind of out of the picture at that point because I'm pretty much gone 14 days after the campaign is over. However, there have been a few. You can Google them and read about them. What I would suggest, if I were the one in that position, would be to refund the backers because you have their emails, you have their information. Now, granted, you're probably going to have spent some of that money on manufacturing development. And Kickstarter backers realize full well that they're backing something that may or may not come to fruition. They do understand that. However, they're pretty sold on the idea that you're going to make this happen. And so I would say the best thing you can do as a transparent, honest business owner is make sure you have a prototype in place perhaps before you're launching this. Unless it's something simple that you know you're going to be able to develop. But if you're trying to create a techie smartwatch like Pebble did, make sure you actually know how to do it before you fake a watch or something and put it on there and make it seem like it can do all these fancy gadgets. Because there are class action lawsuits. There are lots of remedies for recourse. So, does that help? All right.
Let's thank Zach, everybody.
Thank you.